I'm David Eriksson, co-founder and head of hardware here at Teenage. And by hardware we mean electronics and the platforms that goes around it. I mean, all of us that founded Teenage have been working together since 1999, but with other projects. So we got together in the same office space, another office than this one, around that time. But then we started working on the OP1, the first synthesizer, around 2009, I think it was. So officially, I think it's more like 2009 where we started. We announced very early, and then it was basically our first hardware that we did. I mean, all of us, some people are coming from like the gaming industry, software development, but none of us had really had the experience to mass produce something. So as with many projects, it took us probably twice the amount of time that we initially thought. It was kind of a website with online games, small, like tiny, fun 2-minute games that we did. This is like early 2000. So I would say my background is programming mainly. I don't do that anymore. So now I kind of shifted into electronics. Yeah, he's one of 4 founders at Acne, and I think we met during that time. So when, let me see if I remember everything. Yeah, that was actually 99, 2000, 2001 around. So. Oh, I think it's more about, I mean, Jesper, who's also co-founder here and also the head of design at Teenage, he did a lot of advertising and commercial work in the mid 2000s. So as himself, so that was why he shifted to do that. And eventually we got together and decided, let's do a product instead of working for others, just doing the same thing over and over. We said that we know how to do this now. Let's make our own products. So that's it. Yeah, I mean, everything is a little bit of a coincidence. We had a lot of design drafts. We knew we wanted it small, portable, battery powered, but we didn't have a display in the beginning. I think we were working with a kind of more of a vintage looking display, kind of like the pocket operators that I showed you before. And then we ran across this like really nice looking display. I think we found it at the trade show in Taiwan or something. So then we started to build the design around that display. And that's how the graphics came about, and then the synth was kind of built up around that. So it wasn't like the plan for it to look exactly like that, but everything comes together in a nice way, looking back. I think in the beginning, when it first came out, it's a little bit like when the first cell phones came out with touch. People were seeing it as kind of a gimmick or a toy. But I think we reached out to a completely different audience than like the normal synth community. So that might, at least back then, was more conservative. And I think it was also about the same time when people started selling all their hardware and just running everything in their computers, like with soft synths. Now it's back. Now it's even worse than before. Like the pricing of hardware synths that were made in the 70s, 80s, 90s is just skyrocketing right now. So I think for us it's great to be like in the hardware synth industry, but we still have our own little category. I don't know why we haven't been cloned yet, but I guess it's just too much work to make that synth from scratch. So no other companies probably bothered doing it. Not yet, not that I know about. But yeah, no, but I think we didn't want to make another like traditional synth. We primarily designed it the way we want to work, like the workflow, just to be able to capture the moment. Like maybe you're a keyboard player or someone that likes to work with samples, and just being able to dump it to what we call the tape, like to record it straight into the machine and add effects and EQ. It was kind of the whole thing, so you could basically sketch out the whole song. We were quite strict in the beginning. We didn't have any like sponsorships, mainly because we had very low stock, so we basically sold everything we could make. No, it was back then the trade shows in the music industry was still quite fun, and it was one in Frankfurt and one in Los Angeles called the NAMM show. So the whole industry went there like year after year, including us. And that was like the best place to. It's a hard deadline to make sure you deliver something to show every year, and that was the only thing we did. We just did one or two trade shows a year, and of course our own website. But we didn't really have a marketing plan or strategy. We were just simply too busy making and manufacturing the units. I think some people were seeing Teenage Engineering as kind of a niche company back then, especially since the OP1 costed around $1,000, give or take. So we felt that we really want to make something even smaller, but also like affordable. I think one target we had is it should be as affordable so you can buy it as a gift to a friend. And yeah, most people won't pay $1,000 for a birthday gift, but so we tried to make it at $49. I think we have some models that's around that price point. So again, it started kind of like a coincidence. We found a very low power processor, like the chip, the main processor, from a Norwegian company. They got acquired, but back then they were called Energy Micro. So it was like, okay, this is the perfect part. It's still a slow processor considering what you can buy today, but comparing it to, let's say, a Commodore 64, it's 48 times more powerful and a little bit more. So we felt let's have that limitation. So we can do as much as we can push that CPU to do, and we ended up like with the products we have now. We started with a drum synthesizer, a bass synth, and the lead synth, and now we have tons of models including sampling and voice synthesis. So we really learned how to like push those. But yeah, it's nice to have like tons of limitations, and that's also why they come without the case. There's no plastic. You can see that's one like an environmental aspect. There's no lithium battery inside, so it's only like the standard AAA. Again, if you go to an old synth from the 80s, you could buy it now and it still runs. That's not true for a modern cell phone. I mean, they last for 2-3 years, and then you have to either replace the battery or buy a new one. So we really wanted the pocket operators to be something that you could take out like 2040. Hopefully you can still buy AAA batteries then and plug it in and still run it. So it has no like computer dependencies, or it's very standalone. So. Yeah, exactly, and that was a long time ago. It started with we got approached to make the world's cheapest digital camera. So we basically just helped kind of draft the platform and electronics and of course industrial design. So it's just a circuit board and the cardboard that folds around it, and the USB plug was kind of integrated in the circuit board, so you could push the whole thing into your computer. And the first version actually had 4 buttons on the back. So the idea was that you would take a photo on the furniture you buy, and then you take another photo when you bring it back home, and the third when you install it in your home, and the fourth for anything else. And it composited like a one still with all those 4, kind of like a postcard. But once it was launched, it actually could take 100 pictures, so it got a little upgrade. But I still personally favor the one that just had 1 picture. but with 4 replaceable squares. So so that was an old project we did with them, and then a couple of years later, I think it was 3 years ago, we made another project because we got a lot of friends there. So we helped out do a little like boombox speaker system and a couple of lamps to go with it. And but it's been great fun. We saw it more as a kind of a peek into their world, and interesting to see the whole supply chain around it. So it's very different to where we are. No, I mean they run their own manufacturing, of course. So it's all done by them. We kind of left the engineered shell and they take care of. We had a discussion very early that we would like to do a kind of a clone or a remake of that old Carlson speaker. And after a while we realized we need to work together with them. I mean, of course we can't just make something that looks the same. It's better to make the original. So we eventually managed to convince the Stig Carlson Foundation to do it together with us. So the backstory is like this. There's a guy, or was a guy, called Stig Carlson, and he designed amazing speakers. I would say acoustic engineer, scientist, and also very, 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 good taste for design. So he was active mainly in the 70s. I think the first speakers that were like commercially available that got sold a lot around Scandinavia at the time came out around 74 to 78. So I mean, you probably remember, but I mean, it was one which is the one we make. It's called the OD11, which is a cube shaped, all in wood, and they all have the kind of signature sound that's called the ortho acoustic sound system, which basically means that you have the woofer and tweeter facing upwards in a diagonal way. So regardless where you are in the room, it should sound more or less the same. Versus like traditional speakers, you usually have them facing you, and you should sit in the middle. So it's a speaker made for homes, both in terms of how they look, but also that it sounds well, throughout the room, not only in a specific position. So, and there's of course other Carlson speakers that are both bigger and taller, but we decided to go for the kind of I think it was also the best-selling one back then. So we went to the attic of one of the CAD engineers. I mean, it was all drawn by hand, of course, back then. And on his attic, we found all the old drawings. Like he still kept them. So we modeled everything, all the plastic tools, all the wood parts are like by the millimeter exactly the same as then. And of course, we added new amplification and built-in power system that back then it was passive speakers, but our version is active with wireless features. So, but it was a really fun project to work together with them. It was a speaker that we needed in our homes, so we decided to make it primarily for ourselves. And it was also very early to do what's called, like nowadays, more or less every company do it, but that you can have 2 speakers that synchronize left and right, without the cable in between them. So we developed that platform ourselves, and I think it was launched at CES, another trade show in Vegas around 2014 or 15. But we still sell them, and it's still I think one of the best sounding wireless speakers out there. First of all, we've grown. I mean, when we started the company, it was just the 4 of us, and then we hired the first software guy that helped work on the OP1. Now we're just about 50 people. I think we're 55. So we just want to cover the whole range of products. It's not so much about quantity. It's more about having our own, system for, carrying bags or, stuff to protect your devices, cables, because it can be tricky to find. It's the same with if you have a camera, you have to look for a while to find that perfect like camera, case or bag. So we have a team of 2 to 3 people that work solely with accessories, from fabric to cases to leather, and then we do some collaborations every now and then with third-party companies that do things. The plan was never to be a synth company, even though our kind of heart is within music and making ways to make music, like drum machines, synthesizers, and everything in between, and of course speakers. We have 2 speakers on the market, big and a small one, so to consume music. But we also see ourselves entering the home in a bigger way. Again, most of our customers aren't traditional musicians or studio engineers. We sell a lot to people that just want something that looks good in their home. Maybe they pick our speaker, or it could be someone that's interested in technology. Maybe they buy their first synth ever, and since ours are quite compact and fits well in a home, we kind of get a way wider market than traditional large-scale synthesizers. So I would say ourselves to do much more for both in the professional segment. It could be even bigger synthesizers. Now we're just doing smaller ones, but it could also be in the home environment. Like you could see around our office, we designed all our furniture from scratch. We have our own aluminum profiles that we make to make shelves and desks. And actually, our first product was actually a desk lamp. It came before the OP1. So it was just a traditional custom-made desk lamp. So who knows? We might make a reissue of that, but with modern tech. We had an old ID way before Teenage started, and that device, we were kind of playing with the name of Teenage Engineering. It was a kind of an odd idea of making like a Swiss Army, a digital Swiss Army knife to be able to connect different things. I think it was a pretty bad idea looking back at it, but when we did that design, we had the kind of the name Teenage Engineering to go with it, something for now there's a huge market with DIY people that build their own electronics, or I think it's called tinkers. That I don't know exactly what it stands for, but so I think that we just wanted a really like open, fun company name. It was tricky in the beginning because if you try to say it on the phone, it's like Teenage. You say, well, what? So but yeah, now it works. People remember it, and but yeah, I would say all in all, everything I like, stuff that I buy or stuff that I use, like other synthesizers, it has to be like this instant fun factor, and that's also like the thing we always make sure we have with our from like how it's delivered, how like the manual is the way we write texts, and also down to like the user interface and graphics. It just try not to be too how to say, the opposite of boring.